Good evening, viewers, and welcome to the Tuesday show. Today we're coming to you from our new studios in the heart of East London. We were very pleased to be able to broadcast virtually during the COVID restrictions, and now that they've been lifted, we're very pleased now to be able to come to you in person. We have, although sadly, I'm tonight without my script, so again, we're sort of making it up as we go along, but that's all right because we have two splendid guests that we can work with to do that. Abu Talha is an activist in the Bethnal Green area, and Saeed Ahmed is from the Isle of Dogs. My favourite postcode, E14. So tonight we're going to talk about two things mainly, although you're very welcome to ring in on 0208 1234 507. There's a number on the screen. You're welcome to ring in and talk about the problems in your areas, but we're going to concentrate on two things, namely knife crime and related drug crimes, and also on something else. Oh yes, the LTNs, low traffic neighbourhoods. So if you like, the programme is all about streets today, and it may be that the council is taking a rather different attitude to the streets than we are. So let's start with Saeed. You've done something very practical in response to some very, very sad news from the Isle of Dogs with a number of of incidents, including a murder and a serious injury, and they're not the first. But you've taken a very practical step on the island. So tell us about what you've done about these problems.
Yes. So first of all, thank you, Jenny, for having me here. Following the recent crime, the knife incidents on the Isle of Dogs, we got together in the Isle of Network, and we decided to be a bit proactive about the whole situation, because obviously people, they tend to worry, and there's a sense of genuine fear, of course, if you hear about murder and knife crimes in the rise. So what we decided is we've got a good 50 volunteers got together, and we said we want to sort of raise awareness. So we will be going out onto the streets, obviously not doing the police's job, but we go out to sort of reassure the public. People going around, they might be going home or just coming from the station, just to keep our presence there with white high vises on, and we sort of just show our presence, so people don't feel like, intimidated when they see a group of boys or anything like that.
Is it a formal scheme? Because I thought you were actually a neighbourhood watch group.
Yes, it's been registered. It's a formal scheme, so it has been acknowledged and it's approved, and we've got all the genuine paperwork, everything that we need. So it's a formal scheme, and we sat down with the Safer Neighbourhood team. So we had the police come round, and they were really happy with our approach. And it's definitely a very good thing, and the residents also, they really, they feel safe seeing us around as well.
I suppose it's not just a case of reassuring residents.
Yeah.
I suppose it's also a case of, we all know that youth do gather together.
Yeah.
And maybe also being aware of just where the youth are congregating from one day to another.
Yeah.
I know I've looked out of my window from time to time and say, there's something not right there, noise-wise and people-wise. And I've usually phoned my own. And the youth have gone away, but I don't know if it's cause and effect.
Yeah.
But that's very practical. Why did you feel that was the best way that you could respond to the crisis? I mean, that's very outward.
It is.
Looking, trying to be involved in the whole community. I mean, why did you think that was a good step to take?
It is because, of course, not much been done of police is limited. The resources are limited of what they can do. And obviously they're doing as much as they can. We spoke to the Safer Neighbourhood team. They are stretched, and they do tell us they try to patrol our areas as much as they can. But if they get an emergency call, they got to go. And in the island, we have a very big problem of lack of policing. We had a police station that's been shut. Apparently, the building's going to be sold now. So obviously, we want to save the building so we can get police officers back on the island. And we thought, there's a certain amount of talking we can do and a certain amount of resources we can ask for. So we thought, how about, we want our area to be safe. We want our streets to be safe for our children, the women, the children, whoever they are, the elderly. And we know this group of boys hanging around because they've got nothing better to do. Because they're not going to sit at home. They're 15, 16, 18, 20-year-olds. They're not going to just be locked up at home. They will go outside. There is lack of youth clubs, hardly any on the island.
Well, let's hold that thought. So that's a sort of the reassuring thing. Tag, if you can give us a picture of what's the situation like on the streets in Bethnal Green. Is there, again, sort of similar violence and fear of violence?
Sticking with sort of antisocial behaviour, knife crime, and sort of some of the other sort of street crime that we hear about on the streets of Tower Hamlets. I think it's coincided with LTN and the sort of Livable Streets programme in Bethnal Green, where roads are being shut off and it's become safe havens for criminal activity in many areas. So you get boys congregating in Old Bethnal Green Road now, and it's probably one of the best places for them to hang around because the police can't get there anymore. You can't get emergency services through those roads anymore. So you have people congregating in those areas. I think within the Bethnal Green area, there are pockets of areas that has issues of drugs, unfortunately, and I'm sure at some point we will be talking about that issue. The council have a programme, Operation Continuum, which I have sort of reservations or questions about. But there are quite a few sort of similar issues that you have in the island. Thankfully, no stabbings, to my knowledge. Yet. But these need to be addressed. You touched on sort of youth working.
And that's a problem, isn't it, without proper youth provision? Tell me, let me ask you a probing question here.
Go for it.
You've referred to the young men being standing around in groups on the streets. What do the young girls and young women do?
I mean, from what I think, first of all, they're intimidated. They will feel worried seeing the group of boys because, girls might, they don't hang around in big groups, right? We hardly see girls in big groups. In certain areas you might do. But then I think they will feel scared to go outside. And when they see a group of boys there, they feel like, should I walk past, should I not? And they try, maybe they go a longer route home and things in the route that they're not familiar with, just to avoid the confrontation.
Maybe that's your answer. I mean, reclaim the streets has long been a slogan in the women's movement. Perhaps we need to use your neighbourhood watch model and get those young women out of their homes, walking the streets and keeping the boys in order. Is that
what you're suggesting?
I'll park that idea with you. You can think about it. So bringing, let's talk a little bit about drugs now. I mean, I get the feeling that drug trafficking is a bit more of a problem up in the Bethnal Green area than on the Isle of Dogs. But what do I know? I may be quite wrong about that. How do you feel drugs are going down?
From the last crime statistics I looked at on the Met website, I think around the Whitechapel and Bethnal Green area, there were higher averages compared to other parts of Tower Hamlets. And it's unfortunate. It's an area that I live in. It's an area that I've got a lot of family and friends in. And it's unfortunate that, that there's widespread issues, trading of drugs, people using drugs, and it literally destroys families. I think what's equally sad is we touched on youth provisions earlier. I used to manage a youth club in Bethnal Green in the Minerva Centre. I'm not so sure if that's a hub now, but there were quite a few youth centres when I was youth working at that time. There was one at the Minerva Centre, there was one on Maple Street, there was quite a few dotted around Bethnal Green. But now moving more towards a hub model where you've got one youth hub covering a large area. I think the youth are now becoming less engaged with what the council has to offer through youth provisions. And they don't really have places to go to.
Can you explain to our listeners who may not all have been involved in youth work from either end?
Sure.
Why is it that if there's one centre of excellence in the middle of an area in Tower Hamlets, why youth from young people from different estates won't travel to go to take part in its provisions? Why is it that young people look for something much nearer home?
There's a number of issues. I'll touch on two, if I may. One is actual outreach. And some people or some young people have issues going from one area to another. We might think the days of postcode wars are over, but unfortunately in some areas it does exist. So some young children can't go from one area to another, which is why a youth centre local to them would be much safer. And I touched on sort of outreach, one hub with a couple of youth workers with a square footage of, let's just say a max 20, 30 youths, sort of health and safety permitting, allowed to be in one room. How are you going to manage all the youths within, a larger radius? It was difficult getting kids from one estate into one youth club, let alone, a couple of estates together.
Yeah.
So I think it's all the sort of practical elements, but also the safety element that I think is being overlooked. And then that's the reason why I think we need more youth clubs. I think at one point we had 48 to 50 youth centres around the borough. For whatever reason, it's come down to 5 or 8, I believe now. And who are the biggest losers? It's our young children. Yes. It's our young boys and girls.
And our older residents, of course, who suffer from noise and fear of violence and disruption, and a bit of untidiness. Although I think I've said on the programme before, the young people that congregate on my landing, who don't live anywhere near my landing, but who frequent it on a regular basis, if I come out and say, I've told you before, boys, don't leave a can on the side of the balcony like that, because if you knock it over, it could kill somebody. And they'll say, oh, sorry, and put it down again. So, there's a lot
respectful.
No. Maybe I just look very stern when I go out. But I think it is intimidating to see a lot of young people together. and sometimes it actually isn't. But there's still people, even if they're out in number.
Yeah.
So what's drugs like on the islands these days?
Yeah, that is still an issue. It is an issue. Yeah. People complain of cars pulling in and drug users, drug sellers. A lot. It is a big problem. I think the knife crime and all sorts of crime, it all comes from drug problems. The drug dealers bring in the crime because certain deals don't go through or whatever it is. Certain money won't reach or whatever it is. It causes the problem in local areas through drugs. So that is an issue. A lot of residents during door knocking have raised issues like that, and they said, drug problems and cars pulling in, and people just smoking within the buildings and the smell, and issues.
I didn't know what the smell was for a very long time until my friends informed me. But there you go. What I'm wondering, I've always thought that we have a lot of very good primary schools in Tower Hamlets. What goes wrong when our children go to secondary school and they start to get involved in drugs? Why are we not safeguarding our children once they get to secondary school? Are our secondary schools too big? Do you think there's anything we can do with the schools to sort of draw them in to be having a more positive role in the community?
Definitely awareness. Yeah, raise awareness in schools, 100%, because obviously the kids, they see it happening behind the blocks. They're at home, or they look at the window, they see, what was that about? And then they see, more group of boys coming. They see it, definitely. So, awareness, I think that's one thing we could work with secondary schools, get the young children together, let them know, this is not the right way. And we should report stuff like this.
Yeah, I went to a faith school, so for us it was quite different. We were told that, drugs was forbidden, and that was it. That was the line. And we had a different approach to, dealing with issues like that. And I'm not advocating that every single child in Tower Hamlets needs to go to a faith school, but from my sort of experiences with friends and them going to state school, they have police officers within the schools that raise their awareness, that work with the kids. It probably just needs to be enhanced to some degree.
I mean, I went to a state school, girls' school, and we were similarly told drugs are just forbidden. And, I was very obedient in those days and didn't. I don't know if my contemporaries did or not, but there's an element of what you're used to, isn't there? Although I think there's a lot of traffickers preying on our young people. So maybe we can sort of try to bring those issues together. When we used to have all the schools in Tower Hamlets were part of the local authority, it was much easier to persuade them to run after school facilities. George Green was known as George Green Community School. They used to have an excellent media suite, and young people could really use that as a hub with a small age. And now we've lost that again. So maybe that's something we should get the administration to think about. And which is exactly what Councillor Kabir Ahmed did, I think, last week. He went to the council and he put a motion to the council. It was his turn. I think he's allowed 2 motions a year or something. And strangely, they didn't listen to him. I mean, Councillor Kabir must be worrying that Labour will never listen to him, because it began at the count when he started speaking and the mayor walked out. And now it carried on at the council meeting where he put a motion, and the opposition council, the majority councillors rather, amended it all to sort of say the opposite. And I didn't realise that was allowed. I mean, it's not something as you know, I come from a Labour Party background, and normally you're not allowed to amend a motion to mean the opposite. You just vote against the motion that's down there. So Labour councillors didn't bring a motion about drugs and knife crime, but the one that was there, they sort of took over. So it's like Labour had 2 motions on the order paper rather than one from the opposition, but still, at least it was raised, and Councillor Ahmed was able to make his points. So let's think about some of the points that were in that motion that Labour felt were wrong. Labour at the moment is part of working with the Met Police on Operation Continuum, whereas the previous administration under Mayor Lutfur Rahman worked on the slogan "A dealer a day," and you've mentioned that continuum. So can you tell us a bit about those 2 policies and what you feel that a slogan is?
Sure, I'm not sure who's the marketing advisor for the current administration, but for me personally, I think the dealer a day is a much better strapline for a campaign on, clamping down on drug dealers. I think the target that the Met Police had in arresting a dealer a day set tangible objectives. It made the objectives quite clear. People were accountable. The public were aware that that was something that was happening. Whereas with Operation Continuum, there could be a lot of good work that's happening. I'm sure there is, but I just feel it's all a bit unclear. And they talk about how it's a multi-agency task force with sort of the various different teams within the council that all sort of get together, the licensing teams and the safety teams. But what staggers me is the Dealer a Day program probably did the same thing without having to boast about it. I'm sure there were a variety of different teams involved when it came to identifying drug dealers, and not just the low-level ones, the serious drug dealers, when it came to possibly evicting some of them or putting orders against them. I'm sure those kinds of departments weren't sleeping during those times. And when looking at the last council meeting minutes and looking at the amendments on that motion, I think we're just playing on semantics and, taking out Dealer a Day and replacing it with Operation Continuum and, putting that spin on it. And like you say, trying to actually change a very good motion was quite depressing to see, if I'm being honest. I remember in the years when the Dealer a Day program was live and it was very effective. I remember a lot of people were talking about it. A lot of young people were talking about it. I remember going to cut my hair once in the barbers, and young children there were talking about how the police are really hot on drug dealers.
Really?
And, it just could be me changing barbers, but I don't hear that kind of conversation anymore. So I don't know whether it's happening or it's not.
I'm sure the barbers are a very good source of street information. Seriously, I'm sure that is the case. So, do you have a similar experience, Said? I don't know if you remember a Dealer a Day.
Yeah, definitely. I think, like Abu said, the name gives it away, Dealer a Day. So it's a hot project, right? They will be on it. They're going to catch
1,250 odd people that got drug dealers that got arrested.
Yeah, definitely. And the name gives it away. So it's the council's out there, the police is out there. They're going to catch one a day. So however many there are. So over 1,200 is a big number, definitely.
I think that what I liked about that slogan was it was what it said on the tin.
Exactly.
It was drug dealers. That was a dealer is a drug dealer. It's sort of very common. And so you knew it was a campaign against drugs. Whereas Operation Continuum could be, let's tidy up a bit. They always have these strange names for their projects, don't they? Operation Tea Towel and all this sort of stuff. So what is it? And I think I've only written one in East London News, one Operation Continuum report. And there, the number of arrests, for start, it was an aggregate of an operation that had taken place in Tower Hamlets and in Hackney. So the overall arrests weren't as great for Tower Hamlets. And second, the arrests were for some very minor things as well as, some drug dealers reports. So I think this Operation Continuum doesn't really tell us very much. So, it was good you're right, it was good for Councillor Ahmed to bring the issue up and to get it aired, but very disappointing that Labour seemed to continue their,
sadly,
closing their ears to what he had to say. And the other area, of course, where they're closing their ears rather is on the low traffic neighbourhoods, the LTN, where they listened after the Weavers by-election result, but seem now to have brought the system back completely unchanged, or almost completely unchanged. I'm just going to say here, yes, our telephone number has disappeared on the screen, and we'd be very happy for you to phone in and tell us what drug crime is like in your area, what knife crime is like in your area, and what you feel could be done to improve the youth service to tackle those two issues. So we very much welcome your calls on that subject, but we're also of course, here to talk about the other side of the streets. As I said, there's low traffic neighbourhoods.
Yeah.
Now, the scheme on the Barkentine, on the Isle of Dogs, was actually not that bad, Saeed, but you think there's a problem with the consultation?
That's right, yeah. So during our door knocking around the around Alpha Grove and that whole area, there was mixed reactions. Some residents were happy with it because it sort of, controlled the traffic, definitely, whereas others didn't like the one-way system, and they thought, it's going around the wrong way, and, I think the main reason was lack of consultation. Yeah, lack of consultation. Residents still couldn't get their opinions through enough of what they wanted.
Where is the scheme exactly? Is it Alpha Grove, which is sort of the inside road of the Barkentine estate, or I thought it was just along that road, I can't remember the name of, it's even got a name, the service road that leads from Alpha Grove at the north side up to the Two Calms.
Yes, I think there's a one-way system that was created from Stafford Street down to Alpha Grove, and I think there's the bit you said behind Barkentine. There is that bit as well. I think the bit that impacted the most is the one-way system, because it's the whole of Alpha Grove. That's the biggest impact. Because
it alarms me because I had to drive to the Barkentine. I spent a Saturday a couple of months ago, or maybe less actually, going to every consultation meeting that One Housing Group held on their merger. And it was great fun in some ways. They sort of said goodbye at the end of the first one, they move on to the second one, and me, I'm here again, which was just as well because hardly anybody else was. But it meant I had to park near Phoenix Heights.
Oh, I see, yeah.
And I did go into the Barkentine to do that. And the first thing, I hadn't been there for a while. I thought, it's getting so clamped in somehow.
Yeah.
It's just such a cramped area. It always used to be quite difficult to drive around there. But now the cars seem to be so close together, it's actually hard to park.
Yes.
So I can't imagine that it's really solved that thing. It looks worse, if anything.
Yeah. I mean, like I said, people, some like it and many don't. And it's just lack of consultation, I would say, definitely, to hear everyone's opinions.
Yes, and I haven't been to Bethnal Green.
Well, lucky for you.
For a while.
lucky for you, because it's a nightmare. Is there. It's honestly a nightmare.
Share your nightmares with us.
Well, I think Kabir's campaign was heavily focused on that, because LTN starts from Arnold Circus and goes all the way down Old Bethnal Green Road, which comes into sort of the area that I used to run a youth club. Speaking to residents there, friends there, it's an absolute nightmare. Let me make one thing clear. We all want air quality to be better in Tower Hamlets. No one's denying that. But what I seem to be scratching my head about, and what I can't figure out, is whether there's no other ways or amendments to the current way of doing it, or a better way of doing it, because everyone I speak to, well, most people I speak to, they have complaints about it. There were videos and pictures going around initially with emergency services driving on top of pavements on Bethnal Green Road to go around the bollard. Obviously, that affects response times for them getting to an emergency. You've got boys congregating in those areas because, like I said before, police can't get there. You've got issues with diverting traffic now. So you've got bottlenecks because cars can't come through a certain road. They're going through smaller roads, which is causing much more traffic on those roads. And the traffic, you're not reducing it, you're just diverting it through side roads. And Hackney Road, unfortunately, has become a what's the word I'm looking for? It's been adversely affected. Hackney Road is standstill for most of the day because traffic is diverted from Old Bethnal Green Road to Hackney Road, and it's just the whole area. It's become a nightmare, like I said before. I know quite a few elderly families that live there. People that rely on cars and people that rely on taxi services. They have to walk out of that area for them to get into a car. Surely I'm no travel expert, but from what I've read, the council used consultants to come up with a travel strategy. And I know Councillor Wood, I think, questioned the use of travel consultants. But surely there could have been some kind of system where a camera could potentially pick up on cars that aren't meant to be there. a camera would allow emergency services to go through. Maybe people with disability badges and people that need cars won't be won't stop cars coming in and picking those people up. And I'm sure there are ideas like that and others that could have been implemented. You talked about LTNs and it coming back online straight after the Weavers election. I think that was a big mistake by the current administration. I think one of the biggest lessons of recent times was the fact that people do not like that scheme through Kabir's result. And the fact that they paused it temporarily and now have rebooted, I think, 7, but 10 have sort of remained paused, I believe. It just shows that the current administration aren't listening. Mayor John Biggs, I believe, has said in the East London Advertiser that it's his scheme and he wants to he wants to see it flourish, or he wants to implement it. And for me, just having that, I don't want to say arrogant, but not listening to the residents is just going to cost him even more. Kabir's election was a small area of Tower Hamlets. This would potentially cost him his position as mayor. And I think it's a serious issue, honestly.
Yes, I mean, it makes me wonder if, the feeling I get is that people in Tower Hamlets are being treated as if we lived in some sort of leafy suburb.
Yeah.
And we're all being told off for having cars and having them in the wrong place and for using them if we have them. Have a car but don't use it, that sort of thing. Whereas perhaps actually the problems are from the through traffic.
Yeah.
And if we don't stop that through traffic, then it's no good punishing us who live here all the time.
Brick Lane is a good example, right? Well, I don't know if it's a good example. It's an example of things changing.
What have they done to Brick Lane?
So they put in bollards, I think, last year, where they closed off the entire road.
Yeah.
They took it off, and now they've got cameras on there now. So from, I think, Thursday or Friday till the rest of the weekend, they don't allow cars to come in, or you'd get penalised, you get a fine for it. So that's why I got the idea of using cameras to manage the area. At least delivery drivers can go through. At least emergency service can go through Brick Lane. At least it's not stopping cars from going through, the ones that need to, but you're still deterring the vast majority. It's just working smart, Jenny. That's all it is. It's just trying to think outside of the box. And that's a good example of how they've listened to people and changed things. And I think Bethnal Green is definitely due one of them, because otherwise a lot of people won't be visiting Bethnal Green anytime soon.
It's a shame, isn't it? Because, somebody who lives on the island, we have our provision.
Yeah.
But it used to be nice to sometimes go to Bethnal Green Road.
Yes.
Just because it's such a different area of shops. And, I remember taking my son to a famous fast food restaurant.
Don't tell me it's KFC.
No.
Okay.
In Bethnal Green Road.
All right.
And they had run out of tomato ketchup. I shouldn't really tell this story against my own child, but I'll be accused of cruelty. But and it was midwinter. It was really, and there was a lot of snow and ice around. And to explain to him why his beloved tomato ketchup was not available, we told him that the pipeline of tomato ketchup had frozen and it was therefore not being delivered to the restaurant. And bless him, he agreed. It was terrible. All the pipes were freezing up like this. So,
yeah, the reason why I mentioned KFC is the last time I was there, a fellow customer came from the Isle of Dogs.
Oh, yes.
And she was like, exactly. She goes, I don't like the Mile End branch. They cook the food differently. I didn't think they did. But she goes to the Bethnal Green one. And she has been going there for, I think, 15, 20 years from the island.
You see, we don't have KFC on the island, do we?
No, we don't have KFC.
We have sort of posh places, I'm afraid, that, to deal with our newer residents.
Yes.
We welcome our newer residents by making sure they don't have to confront fast food chains on the way in, that they can get their posh meals. So
yeah, I think Jenny, just on the point of LTNs and Liverpool streets, something has to be done. Surely, just resuming the scheme. It can't be the smartest decision the current administration has made. Bethnal Green, there's around 4 or 5 roads that have been affected. Connecting Bethnal Green Road and Hackney Road, it's probably just 1 or 2 roads now. Before you had 5, 6 different roads, from Pollard Road to Can Robert Street to Punderson Gardens. There was quite a few. You're testing my knowledge now. But you can't go through any of those roads now because they've blocked the road. And like I say, it's causing so much chaos and havoc in Bethnal Green. And I've got a feeling the elections will tell in 2022. I think that's going to be a key talking point, a key sort of election discussion. And I have to listen to it all.
And maybe after the elections, we can actually see if we can persuade a new administration, because there will be a new administration, to actually just, again, pause again. The LTNs and think if that's really suitable for us, or if not. I think we've actually got a call coming through now. Can you hear us, caller?
Hello, hi, Jenny, it's Mayim.
Mayim, hello, Mayim. You're a bit faint. I don't know if that's in the studio or at your end. Are you enjoying the discussion, Mayim?
Yes, I am. I think it's a fantastic discussion. Well done to Talha and Saeed. I think they're really working hard within the community, and it's an excellent show. Well done to you as well. I just want to point out 2 things here. Whether one is LTS, whether it's Isle of Dogs or Bethnal Green or wherever it is, I think this obviously this option was really bad, and they totally messed it up. The Labour administration messed it up. But they failed to consult residents. The consultation issue was the main. I think they haven't consulted the right way, or they haven't consulted the way they should be consulting. They've done it the way they wanted to do it. So that's why the consultation doesn't really mean anything. And they went ahead with the LTN and the road closures and all that. That's one thing. And second, I mean, I live on the Isle of Dogs. I've lived all my life on the Isle of Dogs, and I've seen the community grow. I've seen things changing, development and everything. And sometimes I feel these people, they are truly not representing us. I'm not saying that because I'm a different party and they're, I don't like them or anything like that. I'm saying that because, I mean, our police station is closing. They're selling off the building. There's no youth club. There's not a single council-run youth club on the Isle of Dogs. So I'm just beginning to think, do they have anything against the resident of Isle of Dogs, that they are totally shutting everything off from our children? First thing is community safety, about the safety, closing down the police station. And secondly, services for our youth. Not a single council-run youth club on the Isle of Dogs. They don't exist. So where are youth supposed to go? Where are they? They're hanging around the blocks. They've got nothing to do. I'm sure the council has a duty to provide some kind of facilities for the youth. So I hope the panel agrees with me and they can help me out here.
I think when it comes to youth provisions, when Councillor Mayum and the team were in power, I believe they invested £10 million in youth services, one of the highest in London in terms of spend on youth services. From my last conversation with some people involved in that line of work, I believe it's less than 2 million now. It's at 1 point something at the moment, which just goes to show the commitment.
I think,
I know on the flips.
To be fair, the administration would probably say that they've had their budgets cut. They've got.
I was just about to say that.
Yeah, and having these hubs is a much cheaper way, a much more effective way of delivering the youth service. But you said you don't agree. Sorry.
No, I was going to say on the flip side, I'm sure they've had to deal with government cuts, but look at some of the other things they've been doing. They held a referendum on the mayoral system, which cost millions, which cost a lot of money.
Yes.
The Liverpool Streets campaign, it costs, I believe, 2.7 million. Some of the other things they're running during their term it's costing a lot of money.
Well, the referendums on whether to change the names of 2 of the wards.
Exactly.
Another thing,
Must have cost a
would
peak.
not have come cheap. So my point.
I could have done without the democracy of being invited. I wouldn't live in the wards, being invited to consider changing my ward's name.
Sure.
I could have done without that if I knew the money was going to, to
Sure.
service.
So St. Peter's, I believe, is being changed to Bethnal Green.
Yes.
Bethnal Green East, and there's Bethnal Green West now. So just think of all the things that need to change now.
Oh.
Could have that money be used for something better? So it's not the case constantly that, yes, we're dealing with government cards and we don't have the money. It's an allocation of resources. Use it properly, and I'm sure money will be there.
And there's also sort of getting your money's worth.
Exactly.
What we don't invest in our young people now, we have to invest in them later when maybe we're putting them in a prison, or maybe we're just dealing with the antisocial
difficult
behaviour.
way, really. So we take it in our hands now and provide the services that we can provide, in the midst of the cuts. Or then, it's the youth that will suffer later on.
Well, it works, doesn't it? I mean, I'm going to give a shout out to one of the great youth workers on the Isle of Dogs now, past years, Margaret Tracy, and say, I actually met a young person who was working for a young man who was working for a bank, and at a work-related conference at George Green, and he seemed to know a lot about the island. So I sort of said to him why, and he explained that he had actually grown up on the Smoot estate on the island, and Margaret Tracy had got all the young people together every summer, sorted them out, did things, we found a minibus, took them to Epping Forest or Southend or wherever, and it kept them out of trouble.
Yeah, definitely.
And he was able to get an education, and he got a job with, I can't remember which bank it was, but and he had a little house in Newham. He'd be able to sort of invest in that, and that's the sort of the way that we need our young people to go, isn't it? Basically, finding a path that young people in other boroughs find more easily. So there we are. But we can't go without. We're coming towards the end of our time. If anybody else would like to ring up and share stories about knife crime or their experience of Liverpool low traffic neighbourhoods, LTN. Can't remember that word. There's 2 other things that happened. Forgive us for being parochial, Mr. Bethnal Green over there, but on the island. This week we've had the announcement that the government has, after all, overturned the planning application on
Westbury Printers.
That's the one. Westbury Printers. I assume I won't even ask if you welcome the decision, because I'm sure you do. It had very little social housing in.
Yeah.
But can you see a way forward, Saeed, as an island campaigner? What do you think we should do about that site now? It's sitting there. It's enormous.
Yes. I mean, first of all, again, like I mentioned before, consultation is really important. See what the residents want, because it's their area and they've seen enough towers and buildings go up in the Isle of Dogs. And, mainly a lot of consultation where everyone is involved and maybe reaching out to them rather than just holding consultation and wait for people to come up. So getting enough consultation and then making a good decision of what happens and if there should be development or who should be doing it, and a thorough process, definitely. And I think the residents have seen enough, because people really complain about parking issues there. They complain about green space. There's a lot of issues locally once you speak to people on the doors, and perhaps you can make it into a nice park or something for children to play, and the safe environment. And there has to be a good thorough review of what should actually happen with that area.
Yes, I mean I've always said on the Isle of Dogs we have a lot of estates. We do in Tower Hamlets, and a lot of our former council estates, because of right to buy, are now mixed estates.
Yeah.
And then they build private estates, and those private estates never become mixed.
Yeah.
No.
They have an element of social housing in them or near them. But nobody's building social housing, so that's getting underrepresented in the housing mix in Tower Hamlets. So I can't see why some of these developments shouldn't be 100% social housing, which if you like is a delayed forecast of a mixed estate. but apparently that's not legal or something, so we can't do that.
As well as I think social housing, I think it's important that the infrastructure around the development has to be good.
Yes.
So it's all well and good having houses for people, but do you have enough doctor's surgeries? Do you have enough parks and gardens, as you mentioned before? Do you have schools on the island? Enough schools on the island. So it's considering those kind of things for me that are important.
Yeah. And policing, of course. Do we have a police station? It's one
Exactly. You don't even have one on Manchester Road anymore.
No, there isn't.
And we don't have that one in Limehouse either.
No.
In Road, that's gone.
That's right. We're lucky we've still got one in Bethnal Road. And long may that continue and be there. But it's consideration like that I think are really important. In an area that's heavily densely populated, you need to make sure you've got the schools and doctor surgeries and everything else there, because the people that I know on the island, some of them are still dropping off their kids to schools in E1 and E2 and E3 in different parts of town hamlets. And surely there's better ways of doing it. And coming back to our favourite topic of sort of environment and air quality and pollution, parents are driving their kids to E3 and E1 and E2. So,
That's clearly adding to it. So, and the other decision, of course, sadly, that we've had on the island in the last week or so is, well, we all saw it coming, the confirmation that One Housing Group is going to be taken over by the Liverpool-based Riverside Housing Association. How do you feel about that, Saeed? Do you think that's a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, like, the thing is, a lot of people that are within One Housing living there, they don't know what's happening. So when you speak to them, they're not aware of it. They don't know what benefits they're going to get out of it, or is it a bad thing? And what touch does Riverside have to the island? How connected are they?
We're all in the same ocean, I think, is the
yes. Apart from that, I mean, the genuine problems that people are facing. I mean, One Housing isn't really great. The amount of problems people say at the doors. Has Riverside taken all that into consideration? Would they turn this around? Would people get a better living condition? There's the tall flat by Samuda, it's got water leaking through people's roofs and the ceilings. It's embarrassing. It's embarrassing to see, you're living in Tower Hamlets, in the heart of London, and you've got water dripping.
Shadow Canary Wharf.
Yeah, Shadow Canary Wharf, and you've got water dripping down your ceiling.
Only every time it rains.
No, okay. Otherwise, it's okay. And it hardly rains in London, does it? Does it rain?
Yep. 3 times last summer.
Yeah.
I'll also tell you what wet MDF smells like. It's not good. But of course, one always feels that nothing can be worse than One Housing Group, and then you suddenly think, well, maybe. And I think the responses in the consultation were, I think, less than 5%, which again doesn't show a great engagement. And most of those were me. So
was it during lockdown? The consultation?
It was.
Okay.
So it just escaped lockdown, but
okay.
I think it's again that housing policy really does need looking at properly. We can't do much as a borough. We are where we are, and we are sadly where other people have put us. But it's not. I'm tempted to say that. The conditions on our social housing estates are just so poor they wouldn't be tolerated in owner-occupied properties. But actually, I know that some of them are, because again, on the island, some of the I'll call them posh tower blocks they've put up contain flats which have been bought, and bits are falling off them. That's been mentioned often enough, and bits shouldn't fall off. Buildings.
In Blackwall Way, there was a fire a couple of years ago. I think it was just before lockdown. Was that in a social housing building, or was it in a private apartment?
I think it was social housing.
Was it?
I think it was, because it wasn't actually in Providence Wharf.
It wasn't. That's what I was trying to figure out.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was the 10th, 11th, and 12th floors, but I think the flats were social housing flats. even if the block as a whole wasn't. And obviously that was very scary.
Absolutely. I remember seeing videos, and you think of Grenfell when you think of
course,
some of the other buildings.
Yes, that was.
It's quite frightening.
No, of course it is.
So, as I say, we're coming to the end of our time, I think, and I can't see my script at the moment, so I don't know what other questions I was going to ask you. I'm just trying to remember that. I remember seeing that Tower Hamlets has announced this week that it's going to get carbon neutral by 2045.
Okay.
And I think it's Hackney, if not it's Newham, but I think it is Hackney, has announced it's going to get carbon neutral by 2040. So I don't know if there's a bit of competition going on. I haven't looked into that.
Who announced it first? Probably Tower Hamlets, and then Hackney thought, let's beat them.
Do you think so? Yeah, I know that element of competition is still there. Well, there's obviously a lot more that we could talk about the borough, but
definitely.
I think we'll call it a day for tonight. So thank you for listening, dear listener. We have a host of news that we'd love to share with you, but at the moment I can't access our Facebook page. I'll try and put the information on there later this evening. But if you remember, a couple of weeks ago, we had 2 community activists from the Mile End area. We called them the Mamma Mias, and that was Azad and Halal. And they were telling us about traffic problems on Burdett Road. And they have now done their petition. And it is online, and we will publicise that on our Facebook page where you're listening to this as soon as possible. So our loyal listener, Benji, can put his paw print on the signature any day now. That'd be good. And I think we've got a couple of other things we need to tell you about. So come back to our Facebook page. Keep an eye on that. But otherwise, we'll see you next week. And thank you very much for listening. See you next week.